So hello everyone, welcome back to your course, Chemistry for Engineers Laboratory. And today we will be performing the first experiment, which is entitled your calorimetry. But before that, what I will be doing is I will be performing a simulation video for you. Then afterwards, I'll be providing you a link wherein you could perform the experiment on your own. And of course, it will come with an activity that you would need to answer in order for us to assess if you achieved the learning objectives of the first experiment. So first of all, the experiment title is calorimetry. So as you can see it here on your screen. And of course, let's first go to the learning objectives. What are the things that is expected of you at the end of this course, or rather at the end of the experiment? So first is you have to know when to apply the very first law of thermodynamics. Wherein I believe you have already learned this in the very first, or rather the second video lecture that I provided in the lecture, or the second lecture video in your chemistry for laboratory lecture proper. Wherein you know that the heat loss, that's Q, plus the heat gained is equal to 0. So knowing the first law of thermodynamics, you have to apply this to calorimetry experiments. And then the second objective is to run a series of experiments, collect data, and determine the heat that was exchanged during a physical process, such as mixing hot and cold water. Third is to be able then to identify what substance gains heat and what loses heat in any calorimetry experiment. And lastly, to be able then to calculate the enthalpy of reaction of a certain solution. So let's go to the simulation activity. Let me first introduce to you, this is your calorimeter here. Andun po siya sa loob. Mamaya pag nag-run po tayo na experiment, you will be able then to see what it actually looks like. And then of course you have your thermometer here, which will indicate the temperature of the substance inside the calorimeter. Of course, you have your steerer that should constantly steer the solution while you are recording the temperature. Of course, you have here a graph wherein it will record the temperature every second or every minute, depending on how long. And then, of course, you have here the timer. So this is the very first experiment that we will run. You have here on the right side of your screen, you are to select a sample. So let's first select, of course, your cold water. The very first experiment that we will be doing is we will mix cold water in that of the hot water. And then afterwards, after collecting their temperature, we will mix them together. And of course, we will be reaching a final temperature. So just select cold water and of course click on start. So as you can see here, the steer is doing its job. Of course, you have here the timer. Just so you know, class, the timer will be for 5 minutes. So it will run for 5 minutes. And then after that, that's the only time that you get to run another experiment. And we're almost at the 4-minute mark, class. And by the way, let me just tell you that the mass of the cold water inside this calorimeter is set at 100 grams. So we assume that the mass inside is 100 grams. So that's what's happening inside. So you have there your cold water. Just in case you would like to see what is happening, just click on the cross section checkbox there. So let's take a look at the graph. So from the time of 0 up until it reaches the 5-minute mark, the temperature was constant at 27.1 degrees Celsius. So you could go ahead and take note of this temperature for the cold water. Then after that, you will be doing the same procedure with the hot water. So let's click on start. So you will record the final temperature of the hot water again for 5 minutes. This is what's happening inside. Once the timer has stopped, you will be recording as well the temperature of the hot water. So that's the blue line there. And then you go to select the sample and you will be mixing the two together. So just click on hot water plus cold water. And of course, you click on start. And then you wait for the timer to stop. Then after that, you record the final temperature as it will be required in the file that I will be giving you. So that is the very first simulation experiment that you will do. Now, after collecting those information, you would need to answer or calculate for the heat of the calorimeter or the calorimeter constant rather. Once you know the calorimeter constant, of course, that will be the first requirement in the file. You could go now to the second experiment wherein you will be performing the same experiment. However, you instead of the hot and cold water, it will be different substances, the hydrochloric acid, your sodium hydroxide, and then you mix them together. It's actually the same experiment proper, just different substances. And of course, you would be required to calculate for the enthalpy of reaction once you performed this experiment already. So that's it for this simulation experiment, or rather simulation video. Please do this experiment once it is already available in your modules tab. Okay, so that's it for me for today. Please stay home, stay healthy, and stay safe. Goodbye, everyone.